Hey, this is Rachel Cunningham, and you're listening to Joyful Love, episode 92. If you're ready to bring joy and connection back to your marriage, stick around. Each week, I give you the tools to up-level your thinking, open your heart, and bring joy and fun back to your relationship. Because it's not enough just to stay married. We want to love being married. So today on the podcast, I want to talk about the difference between moving towards our ideal marriage, the ones that we want to feel good about being in, and the difference between that and expecting a perfect marriage. We're also going to talk about the difference between happiness and joyfulness as it relates to our relationships. This is so important because wanting a perfect marriage can actually hinder you from loving deeply. And it can hinder you from moving towards the marriage that you actually will feel good to be in. It can also hinder you from seeing the good that is already there. And just like in anything, perfectionism can hold you back from experiencing genuine joy and peace, not only in your marriage, but in your life as well. We can see how perfectionism hinders us in all the areas of life, right? From keeping our homes nice and orderly to going on a diet or in our personal careers. Perfectionism holds us back. So let's take diet, for example. I personally am working on eating an anti-inflammatory diet as an ongoing journey of how I can feel my best in life. And if you've been around long, you've probably heard me talking about my joint pain and my back pain and my hip issues. And so in addition to seeing a physical therapist and chiropractors and working on my posture and standing up more during the day and taking lots of walks, all of those things are part of my journey. But also, I'm working on eating an anti-inflammatory diet. But I'm not always cooking at home. And it's not always super easy to keep things out of the house that are not anti-inflammatory, right? So there are times when, let's just take going out to eat, for example. There are times when we go out to eat when maybe the menu isn't super ideal for anti-inflammatory. And there are times when, well, I just want a cookie if it's at the house. My ideal self that I'm working towards is able to make healthy choices enough, like I'm imagining her right now, right? My ideal self, not my perfect self, but my ideal self is able to make healthy choices enough to make a huge difference in the way that my body feels. That is what I'm working towards. Am I perfect at it? Oh, absolutely not. But I have that ideal self in my mind, and I'm consistently getting better at honoring her. But those times when I'm really held back are when I have a perfectionistic view on how I need to eat. When I have that perfectionism at the front of my mind, that if I eat a cookie or if I grabbed some chips that were out on the counter, if I'm in that perfectionistic mode, I end up saying to myself, well, I've already effed up, so I'm just going to eat whatever I want the rest of the day. And then the rest of the week, and then another month, right? So, and that is not helpful in any way. It's a perfectionistic mindset that will keep me going backwards in my health every time I make a simple choice that's not the best. But let's say I ate the cookie and I noticed, oh yeah, that wasn't on my nutrition plan right now. And so what if I actually used that moment for me and said, okay, I'm just going to pay attention to how my body feels. How does it feel after I ate the cookie? Do I feel tired? Do I feel like I've lost energy? Do I feel like my joints are extra achy? And what if I use that imperfect moment for my growth instead of against it? That is a growth mindset that will move me towards my ideal self in this area, and it doesn't require perfectionism. And if I'm evaluating this moment, I'll either realize, hey, I can have one cookie and my body feels just fine. It's just when I eat 5 cookies that it's not fine. Or maybe I'll say, "Oh, yep, that one cookie did have a really negative effect on my body, so I'm gonna pay attention next time, and I'm going to work towards choosing fruit instead." There's no need for criticism or shame right here for not doing things perfectly, right? It's just an intentional moving yourself towards your ideal self. And that means that you're going to have compassion and love for yourself as you learn what's best for you and as you learn how to break old patterns. Without perfectionism, it opens you up to being willing to evaluate your behaviors instead of hiding them and stuffing them and shaming them, right? And when you evaluate your behaviors on a regular basis with love and compassion, that's where growth happens. That's where you move towards becoming your ideal self. Whereas if you're a perfectionist in this area or in any area, that's just going to keep you in the cycle of criticism and shaming yourself and others, right? Because what we do to ourselves is what we do to others as well. And it's going to hold you back. It's going to encourage you to give up, and it's going to encourage you to go back to your old ways. So that's just the food issue of how a perfectionistic mindset will hold you back. So let's apply it to marriage now. We are sold the fairy tale that it is possible to live happily ever after, right? And the day that we are not happy, we start to worry and criticize ourselves. And we criticize our partners. And we feel shame. And we even want our partners to feel shame. We try to get them to feel shame because we think that's what's going to move us towards a perfect marriage or a happy marriage, right? Our brains are a little nuts like that. They think that criticism and shame is actually going to create something beautiful, and it never does. When we start to criticize ourselves and our partners for not being happy like we were told we were supposed to feel in those fairy tales, we start acting and communicating in ways that tear our marriages down instead of helping them to improve and grow to the ideal marriage that we want. Now, let's be clear. None of us are happy all the time. We're not supposed to be. If we were happy all the time, we wouldn't be able to recognize the things in our relationships or in our lives that do need to be improved. If we were happy all the time in our relationships, it would mean that either both of us were perfect, which is not the case for any of us, or that we are ignoring very important things that need to be dealt with. And we're putting our head in the sand and just pretending that everything is okay so that we can have a happy look on our face and so that everyone, society, our family, our friends, everyone thinks that we have this happy, perfect marriage, right? Look, I am a marriage coach. Good relationship skills are often on my mind. It is literally my job. And I have an incredible husband who communicates with me very well most of the time. And yet, we are both far from perfect. There are times in our relationship where one or both of us are not happy about the way something in our relationship or our life is going. But during those times, when we are not happy on the outside and in our minds, we still have deep joy and peace in our relationship overall. Because you don't have to have a perfect relationship, nor be happy about the way things are going all the time, to have deep joy and settled peace in your marriage. So now I want to talk about the difference between happiness and joy. The two can get confused very easily. So let's dig in and see what the actual definition is. Happiness is a feeling of pleasure or contentment. Happiness happens in the mind. It comes from the way that you are thinking about a situation or circumstance. It can change from moment to moment. Circumstances definitely help with happiness. If you are in a circumstance that feels safe and loving and balanced and exciting, it's easier to feel those bursts of happiness. We can even have happy moments when our overall life kind of sucks, because happiness is very fleeting. I remember several happy moments when my kids were young and when they were struggling through their teen years, even though overall our life felt really heavy and stressful. And I definitely would not describe those times as happy overall. But there were still happy moments where we had some laughter and fun and pleasure. I remember one particular vacation where the entire vacation was so difficult on each of my kids for different reasons. And therefore, it was difficult on myself. But when we were doing an activity that required us to be present in the moment, like ziplining through the trees or when we were riding up the mountain on one of the ski lifts, those were happy moments. They were exciting. They were fun. But it didn't mean the vacation was filled with happy moments. Overall, most of us would probably say that vacation was pretty hard, because half the time, at least, it was a struggle. But there were still genuinely a few happy moments. One minute it might be happy, and the next not so much. That's what happiness is. It's fleeting. It can come and go, no matter how your life is, right? So if happiness happens in the mind and is fleeting and can be moment to moment and doesn't necessarily tell you about the inner workings of what's really going on, what is joy? Joy is deeper. It does not depend on pleasure or fun. It comes from the heart. It is intentional. It's when your heart feels settled. It is trusting of your life and of your path. It's peaceful. Settled is a great way to describe it. That's one of my favorite ways to describe joy. You can be going through a difficult time and there's not much happiness, and you can still have joy in your relationship. Another time of our life when I recognized that, oh, I do have some deep joy in me, was when our oldest was really struggling with some mental health issues. And then during that same time, my husband's mom passed away from cancer. And then right after that, my husband lost a huge client from his business. All at the same time, we were dealing with grief and worry and financial stress. It was a lot. And I remember making coffee in the kitchen. And while I was waiting for it to brew, I just started doing some yoga. Just a few sun salutations right there on the kitchen floor. I was just taking those 3 minutes for the coffee to brew, to breathe and flow with a yoga practice. Yoga taught me how to be present in a big way. And during that time, I often said to myself, I might not have an hour to spend on doing yoga classes like I really want to, but I can do it for 3 minutes throughout the day when I can. When I wake up, when I make coffee, right before bedtime, I can take 3 minutes at a time to do a flow. So, as I was doing my sun salutations in the kitchen, my husband, my beautiful Chris, picked up a ukulele and started strumming to the beat of my flow. And I noticed we might not have everything figured out. We are definitely not the perfect parents. We might not have anything perfect in our lives. We are far from it. We're not even happy right now, right? There's not even a lot of happy moments in our life right now. We're grieving and we're worried and we're too stressed to have those happy moments. But in that moment, as he was playing the ukulele to my flow, and he was strumming to the beat of my breath and my movement, I thought, there is no other person that I would rather live this difficult life with than that man. We are a good team. Our souls are a good team. Even if the human part of us needs to learn and heal to become better teammates in everyday life. Our souls, our hearts, and our love makes us a genuinely good team to the heart level. And there is no other person I'd rather do this life with than him. That is joy. It is intentionally looking past the circumstances, past our imperfections, straight to the soul and saying, yep, I still choose you. I choose you not because we are perfect together, but because we are imperfect and still believe in each other. We are imperfect and still want to keep learning and growing and figuring this life out together. That is the joyful love that I'm talking about on this podcast. It is why I named the podcast Joyful Love, because it's not about happily ever after. It's not about perfection. It's about getting to the heart. It's about looking deeper into each other. It's about seeing the beauty in each other. Heck, it's about seeing the beauty in ourselves and letting that innate beauty in both of us be an expression that draws us closer and closer together, no matter what the circumstances. I will take joyful love over happily ever after fairy tale love any day. I also want to offer that focusing more on joy and more on creating the ideal marriage instead of creating some happy marriage that's based on being perfect allows you to get honest. It allows you to say, okay, what are we missing to have our ideal marriage? You're allowed to want an ideal marriage. You're allowed to want a joyful, peaceful marriage that feels good to be in, right? We just don't want to expect to have a perfect marriage because that is unattainable and it will only hold you back. And when you drop perfectionism, which is just going to keep you stuck, when you drop perfectionism, it allows you to say, okay, if we want a better marriage, what's going wrong? What might not be okay? What are we putting up with and ignoring? Right? Recently, I had to get really honest with myself and my husband and say, you know what? I am not getting the alone time that I need. It feels like over the last several months, so much has been going on. We went on vacation. We have this new dog in our house that I might have to tell you guys about on next week's podcast. But we've had so much going on that I just feel like I haven't had the solid alone time that I really needed. And so admitting that allowed me to evaluate the situation, and it allowed me to ask myself, why am I not asking for what I need? Why have I felt this way for a few months? Right? It allowed me to really say, am I feeling guilty? Am I feeling shame about needing alone time? And the answer was yes. So I was able to further evaluate and say, okay, where can I drop that shame? Where can I let go of that unnecessary guilt? And how is this ultimately affecting my relationship? When an introvert, man or woman, does not get the alone time that they need, it is very hard to fake connection. So it was becoming difficult for me to want to connect with Chris. We can get so wrapped up in wanting everything to be perfect and happy all the time that we brush over things that might need to be dealt with. And this doesn't propel us towards growth and a good relationship. It causes you, again, to want to just ignore it. So when I was able to say, hey, something's not okay here, something's not working, then I could step into my power and say, okay, what do I want to do about it? So I asked for what I wanted. I was able to tell my husband that, I need a few days away. So I went to stay at a friend's house in the woods where she has a tiny little cabin. And I rejuvenated my soul and my body for a bit. When I accepted that things don't have to be perfect and shame ourselves and beat ourselves up for it, I could admit something was missing. And a beautiful thing happened. A few days after being alone, I started wanting to connect with my husband again. I wanted to call him. I wanted to have conversations with him again. I wanted to spend quality time with him because I said, it's okay that I'm not perfect at this life. It's okay that our marriage isn't perfect. It's okay. that we still have so much to learn. Now, where is my power? What does my ideal self need? And in turn, what does our marriage need for deeper connection? So my encouragement to you today is to work towards being okay with not being happy all the time. Be okay that you and your partner are not perfect people. And recognize that you are both worthy of love and personal growth anyway. And since it's okay not to be happy and perfect all the time, now you get to simply say, without judgment, without criticism, what is my ideal marriage? Not the perfect marriage. What is my ideal marriage? What is my ideal self? What do I want to grow towards? What do I want my marriage to continue growing towards? And then intentionally step into your power and take the next best step to create that. And when you start trusting yourself to intentionally grow and love on purpose, your relationship will keep getting better and better. And you will genuinely have more joy and more peace in life, even when life is hard. So to embrace growth in your relationship, to embrace moving towards a marriage that you feel good to be in, drop perfectionism. You don't need it. Drop the idea that everything has to be happy all the time. That's not what we're moving towards. Do we want to create more happy moments? Of course. But it starts with that deep joy and peace in your life first. Okay, if you are not on my mailing list, I invite you to subscribe. I send out weekly inspiration and I keep you up to date on all the new things in my business that I'm doing for you. You don't want to miss one email. So get on my mailing list if you're not. You can do so by going to rachelcunningham.com and signing up for the free course on better connection. So you'll click the button right there on the front page of my website. You can't miss it. Again, you can find that at rachelcunningham.com. And if you're getting a lot out of this podcast, I invite you to share the love. Share it with a friend or go leave a review on iTunes or Spotify. Every review helps others to know that it might help them too. So go to rachelcunningham.com. Rachel is spelled with an A-E-L. And sign up for that free class on better connection. And then leave a review and share the podcast with others. All right, I'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening to Joyful Love. If you'd like to know more about my work, come visit me at rachelcunningham.com. That's Rachel spelled with an A-E-L, Cunningham.com.